The 1980s. In the 1980s, civil and human rights protests are beginning to increase after the death of Arthur McDuffie. Racial tensions are high as the Miami riots begin. The nation is also disheartened by the explosion of the Challenger. 5 cases of a rare form of pneumonia have been found in young gay men living in the United States. Accompanying this is a rare form of skin cancer, Kaposi's sarcoma. This will be the start of the HIV AIDS epidemic. By June 5, 1981, the CDC has put out the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, MMWR, of the newest disease, and the media quickly picks it up. By July 3, 1981, this disease has a name, and the New York Times has picked up a new story idea. They become the first to publish a story on AIDS. The CDC labels the new disease Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome, AIDS. The CDC also informs people of 4 potential risk factors: male homosexuality, intravenous drug abuse, Haitian origin, and hemophilia A. The cause is unknown, but AIDS is spreading fast across the United States. The acronym GRID, or Gay-Related Immune Deficiency, is commonly being used by the media when reporting on AIDS, linking homosexuality with the spread of AIDS. Congress at this time holds its first hearing on AIDS. The U.S. Public Health Service begins to recommend ways to prevent the spread of AIDS through blood transfusions and sexual contact. The CDC begins to clarify its usage of the term high-risk group and urges this not to be used as justification of discrimination. AIDS has now made it on the radar of the World Health Organization, WHO, as it holds its first meeting to discuss the global impact of AIDS. The National Association of People with AIDS, NAPWA, forms, and the 1983 Candlelight Memorial is held. So, what's there to debate? Well, a lot, actually. Who can get AIDS? At the beginning of the epidemic, not much was known about AIDS, but the acronym GRID was used. This spread harmful and misleading information on who AIDS could affect. Many people believed that AIDS was a punishment for gay men from God. Others believed that only gay men could contract HIV AIDS. This rapidly increased homophobia. In reality, anyone can get HIV AIDS. Heterosexual men who get a faulty blood transfusion can contract HIV AIDS. They could also unknowingly transmit it to their wives, who could then transmit it to their children. Who's responsible for AIDS? People are scared and need someone to blame for the disease ravaging the world. Who's to blame? While there is no one person to blame for the spread of HIV/AIDS, scientists have come to the conclusion that humans in the Congo had interacted with chimpanzees infected with SIV, simian immunodeficiency virus, and then transmitted it to other humans unknowingly. Should HIV/AIDS patients have to disclose their diagnosis? Throughout the epidemic, people with HIV/AIDS had been heavily discriminated against. This sparked hate crimes and caused widespread fear among people with HIV/AIDS. Ryan White, age 13, in 1985, is diagnosed with HIV. After his diagnosis, he was no longer allowed to attend school. He later goes on to speak out against the discrimination people with HIV/AIDS face. Another case of discrimination against a person with HIV occurs a year later when 9-year-old Ricky Ray is diagnosed with HIV and is no longer allowed to attend his school, and in 1987 his house is burnt down. People with HIV are now in fear and reluctant to disclose their diagnosis. People are commonly split on this sensitive topic. On one hand, it's private medical information, and people are entitled to their privacy. However, if it risks the health and safety of others, should it be called into question? How is AIDS spread? HIV and AIDS are both immunodeficiency viruses, meaning they attack the immune system. In the case of HIV and AIDS, this can rapidly decrease a person's ability to fight off an illness such as a cold or the flu. HIV is spread through several ways, including sexual contact, hetero or homosexual contact, though it is more commonly transmitted through homosexual sex, blood transference, accidentally getting infected blood in a cut or by a faulty blood transfusion, and intravenous drug usage, sharing needles. At the beginning of the HIV AIDS epidemic, people were unsure of how it could be spread, and myths began to arise. We now know that HIV cannot be transmitted through kissing, sweat, tears, spit, or simple touching, and that it is completely safe to have casual contact with people infected with HIV. What was the global impact of the HIV AIDS epidemic? In 2020, there were over 1.5 million reported cases of HIV. This is, however, not the highest the cases have gone. In 2005 and 2006, nearly 2 million cases of HIV/AIDS were reported. HIV/AIDS-related deaths have decreased 64% since the peak in 2004. In 2020, 680,000 people died from HIV/AIDS-related illnesses worldwide, as opposed to the 1.3 million in 2010. So where do we go from here? Two of the current problems HIV/AIDS is presenting are the continual spread of HIV and the spread of misinformation. So how do we combat these issues? To keep the spread of HIV/AIDS down, the CDC recommends abstinence from both sexual intercourse and drug usage involving the sharing of needles, and also encourages those who do have sexual intercourse to use the proper protection and receive regular testing. Educating teens on the risk of STDs, such as HIV, could reduce the spread. People can also take preventative medications such as pre-exposure prophylaxis, PrEP. This medication helps people before they could possibly have contact with someone with HIV. Others who have had or believe they have had contact with someone infected with HIV can take post-exposure prophylaxis, PEP. So how do we stop the spread of misinformation and stigma against people living with HIV? A few simple ways of counteracting discrimination are to change the way we speak about HIV/AIDS and the people living with it, such as instead of calling people living with HIV HIVers, calling them people or persons with HIV. We can also make support groups more well-known and more widespread, as well as continuing to educate people on HIV/AIDS and how they can do their part to end the stigma and misinformation. By following the CDC's guidelines and continuing to live safely, we can all hope that one day AIDS won't be a death sentence anymore, and that we can all live together and do our best to live happy and full lives.